Hi everyone. We've just started a few minutes early to make sure that Jen and I are both on. Let me just make sure that I add Jen to the session properly here. Okay, there we go. And here she comes.
Morning.
Good morning. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
Oh, not too bad. I'm pretty excited here. I think this is going to be a fun session.
I'm going to try plugging myself in because there's some sort of crazy construction happening, like just on the other side of that wall.
Okay.
So I'm just going to plug myself in, and I see that we've actually got a couple of people. So I see that there's 4 of us that are on here already.
Awesome. So, I just realized I have to unplug my aquarium pumps because they're humming away in the background. I don't know. Can you hear them?
Nope, not at all.
Not maybe I can leave them then.
Yeah, hang on. I'm just going to stand up and plug my headphones in so I don't hang anything up. Let me get myself all untwisted here. We've got left, we've got right. And can you hear me?
I can.
Woohoo! So much quieter when you have hi Lindsay Marie, I see you watching. Hello Molly.
There's Molly. Hi Molly.
How's everybody doing this morning? Well, I guess it depends, hey, where you are. So Donna and I are on the west coast of Canada. We're on Vancouver Island, British Columbia. We both live in the same city. So it is 10 a.m. here.
I know it's 6 p.m. It's 6 p.m. in the UK. So.
And I see that Jenny Murphy just said hello from Newfoundland. That's always nice. Always nice to have some of the East Coasters. Oh, and we've got a Florida, USA. Oh, we're international, Donna.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Let me just see here. So I think what I'm going to try to do is I will turn off my notifications, first of all. And then I'm going to pop into here. So I'm going to see if I can keep track of comments.
Okay.
And so I guess if people want to, if you've got questions about anything that we're talking about, you can feel free to make a comment in the bottom. And if I don't get to you right away, try to remind me and we'll come back at the end just to make sure that we don't miss anybody's questions.
Ideally, Jen, what I'd like to do is try and
at the end
answer appropriate ones in the content, but then save if they've missed, like we've sort of gone on to a next topic, then we'll answer them at the end as well. So okay. And so the idea is that we're planning on doing about a 45-minute presentation. We'll see how long we end up going through. Jen and I are notorious for packing too much information into a session. So we always go over, but we're going to try really hard, and then we have 15 minutes at the end that we can kind of play with, whether it's questions or other things come up. I do have a nice kind of a concise section by section, but there's, as I said, other things may come up too. We don't know where this is going to go. It's such a huge topic, looking at improving success for owner trainers. So it could go in any direction. So I'm looking forward to this. I guess we should get started here because it's just at 10 o'clock.
Yippers.
So let me do an introduction and then we can jump right in.
Perfect.
Okay, so I'm Donna Hill. For those that don't know me, I'm with Service Dog Training Institute.ca online, and we offer some structured online classes which are mostly text-based and video. So you'd read through the classes, and then there's video examples of my dogs and client dogs doing the behaviors. And as well, I'm just in the process of adding some audio. Now, audio is very laborious to add. So it's a slow process, but I do have service puppy foundation skills, and I'm just working on public access right now. I've just finished level 1. So it's a process to get those done, but I am slogging away for some of the key classes anyway, because I really want to open it up and make it more accessible to people. I know a lot of people don't learn that well just by reading. Some people prefer to listen. So that's who we're hoping to cater to, and open it up for more students to help them. The other things we offer are web consults. So both Jen and I do one-on-one web consults where we can either do a 1-hour session to answer all of your questions about anything under the sun relating to service dogs, and I get a lot of questions. We also do 3 half-hour sessions weekly, so you get half an hour for 3 weeks, and that's just to help keep people on track. And Jen also does a lot of our fast track programs, which means we could even do daily if you want, for 5 days in a row, and then you can book them. So you get a half-hour session with her every day for half an hour for 5 days. And that can really jumpstart you, hence we call it the fast track. And then we also have webinars too. So we've got a lot going on the website. I'm always tweaking, improving, and maintaining, just like we do with our service dogs. Once they are trained, if such an animal exists, not really, we're always training. So it's an ongoing project as well. And okay, so that's us. This presentation is entitled Owner Trained Service Dogs, Improving Your Success. And just from what we've seen interacting with our clients, we've noticed a number of places that are absolutely critical to help people move along and continue in their success. And it starts right at the very beginning when you're even just thinking of getting a service dog and trying to go through those. So we'll spend a lot of time on that, I'm anticipating, because a lot of what we do really does hinge on preparation before you ever start. So it's about going through, making sure you have the skills, the resources, blah, 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 which we'll talk about in a second, before you even start. And then the training and the processing and the maintaining all comes at a later date. And those are huge topics in of themselves, but just like everything else, you know, what comes before you actually do the behavior is absolutely key. And then of course, then the behavior occurs, and then what happens afterwards. So we're kind of talking about the ABCs, the antecedent, what comes before. So, and we're just looking at service dogs, the behavior itself, which is the training is what we're considering in this case, and then the consequence, which is what comes after you've done the training and moved on. So this presentation will be of interest to professional dog trainers, as well as owner trainers who are super keeners, who really want to and think that they're going to be successful. So you want to improve your chances of success. Unfortunately, with owner trainers, there's no stat anywhere, but just from my general feeling, there's a lot of dogs that are washed for various reasons, dogs that never finished training for various reasons. So we want to help you improve that and really take a hard look before you even start. Is this appropriate for you, your situation, your environment, to help you've got all of those kinds of things. Okay, so are we ready to start? Jen, did I miss anything? Oh, and Jen needs to introduce herself. Sorry, Jen.
Oh, that's okay. There is a lot to talk about. So I'm Jen Hauda. I'm the other instructor for the Service Dog Training Institute. I have been working officially with the Service Dog Training Institute, I think, for about 4 years now. Prior to that, though, I met Donna several years ago at one of our local farmers markets, and she was using this thing, and I had no clue what was going on, but I saw that she had a really pretty dog, so I went over and started chatting with her. And that was actually my introduction to clicker training. I'd never seen anybody using a clicker before. And so I started to follow Donna along on different social media and whatnot. Yeah, it was really inspiring for me to be able to see the difference between reacting to a behavior that a dog was doing to get them to stop it versus teaching them what I wanted them to do in the first place. So for me, that was a really big, profound shift in everything animal related. I am a elite fear-free certified professional. I am also a licensed family pause parent educator. Dog and baby and kid safety is a really huge passion of mine. And it's also an issue that we see come up quite often when it comes to folks that are wanting to bring a service dog into their home or to owner train, and it's really important to get them off on the right foot that way as well too. So yeah, really excited to be here, and yeah, let's get going. Ready?
Okay, let's start. Right. So let's start talking about antecedents, or what comes before training a service dog. So that's a huge picture. So first off, I always look at is, what is the need? So the vast majority of cases, especially early on when I started Service Dog Training Institute, of inquiries that I would get would be panicked owners going, oh my God, I have a dog and my rental requires that the dog be certified in order to keep it because no pets are allowed. Or they're in a strata, and the strata has changed their regulations because someone has come in on the committee and decided they don't want dogs. Or the other key one is that people want their dogs to come everywhere with them. And while those are really interesting reasons to have a service dog, they're not the ones that we focus on, and they're not looking the long term for what this actually means about and what's involved in training service dogs. So we're able to, when I talk to people on the phone or by email, I'm able to ferret those kinds of inquiries out pretty quickly now. It used to take me an hour to get to that point. I've kind of sped my process up so I don't waste as much as my time and their time as well, and figure out what goes on. So basically, the key thing that we look at for need when we're looking at a service dog is to help people live more independently. How does it improve their quality of life? What specifically can the dog do to help them do that? So it's much different than an emotional support animal. It's much different than a therapy animal, for example. We're specifically looking at a dog. Now, there's two kind of levels of service dog, and that is in-home service dogs, which their behavior, of course, in public is really irrelevant. So if you've got a reactive dog, you can still have the dog as an in-home service dog to help you with various tasks. But if you're doing public access, your dog has to be bomb-proof, because anything and everything is going to be thrown at you. So for that reason, if you are planning on going public, you really want to have your dog assessed. If you have a dog, and the vast majority of our clients come to us with a puppy or a dog, I get lots of emails going, I just got a 10-week-old puppy, which is fantastic that they're asking for help, but I kind of wish they would have contacted us before so we could help them even in their selection choice, because they don't always make a good selection for their particular disability, their particular environment. And a lot of breeders really don't know the needs of a service or assistance dog and what that actually means. It's often confused, for example, with, oh, well, a lot of my dogs in my lines are being used as police dogs or search and rescue dogs. And for most clients, they don't want to live with an incredibly high drive dog. They don't have the interest, they don't have the ability, their medical conditions may stop that. So the vast majority of our clients are looking for a really nice, calm, easygoing dog that's easy to manage with medium energy levels as a member of the family first. So that's a really key piece is to look at is, I mean, if you are an experienced dog owner already, and you're super keener and you want to do sports, you can certainly get a dog, but make sure you can live with that dog first with the disability that you have and your family environment and all of that, which we will also get to as well. So anyway, just to get back to that. So the key focus we look at for a dog is that you need the service dog in order to help you live more independently and have a better quality of life. That's the bottom line we're looking at for getting a service dog. So the next thing is realistic expectations. And Jen, feel free to jump in anytime with little anecdotes and stories about any of these.
I'll just mention, I just actually in the chat section, in the comment section, I actually just put a link to choosing a service dog. And so if people want to come back later, because I know we're all over the world at different times, and life is happening as we go. So if people want to come back later on and look for the links to the different resources, they'll be in the comment section, and I'll see too if maybe we can edit afterwards, and we can maybe try putting them up in the top as well too, if people don't want to scroll. So, okay.
Perfect.
Sorry.
Yeah, no worries. We can definitely do that. Okay, so realistic expectations is another common thing we run into. We've had clients who seriously think that their dog is going to be an automaton, And, you know, and they either have never had a dog before, or if they did, they had really low expectations for it. But then suddenly this service dog is going to be the end all and be all. It's going to solve all their problems, but it's not going to cause them any additional work. And as dog owners, we all know that, yeah, having dogs is work. I mean, even my 2 pets are a lot of work, and life happens. Jessie just went through a surgery, for example, and it took 3 weeks of my time. It took her 3 weeks before her stitches were out. She had not just a regular cone on either. She had to have a supersized cone because Jessie's Jessie. She loves attention to detail. And of course, her incision is right on her wrist, exactly where she can reach it. So we had to supersize it. So, you know, there's all these challenges that just go on with living a dog. Raising a puppy is even more. I always tell people, realistically, if you get a puppy, expect it's like adding another child to your family. So if you already have 2 children and one of them has a disability that you're hoping to train the dog for, consider it for the first 2 years like you're adding another child into your family. And, you know, they need that focus revolving around them as well. So it's a huge commitment. And they do have needs. They have their mental needs, their social needs, their physical needs, so the dogs have their own needs, and they come as a package, and they are a lot of work. So clients, and the other thing is the choice of the dog. The selection comes back to this, is when they select a dog and they have, oh yeah, I can do all this cool stuff, because we do see so much cool stuff out there today. Today, there's so many things you can do with your dogs. So many of them are super active. But when we're dealing with a service dog, what do we really want to condition? We want to condition calm, settle, relax, confidence, resiliency. We don't want a dog that's on all the time, because if it's on all the time, it's going to burn really quickly. So, and we have to then be on all the time to manage the dog as well, which is the other piece. So being realistic in your expectations. Yes, it might look great on paper to get a really high drive dog, whatever the breed it might be, but you have to live with that dog. So, and I have always personally chosen pretty calm dogs. My tolerance level for arousal is pretty moderate to low. Lucy is about at my edge of tolerance some days. She's a pretty high drive border collie mix, you think maybe with a Vizsla. And just as a pet, she is challenging on some days. And I mean, she's 12 and a half and she's still going. Not that she's ever been hyper, but when she gets aroused, she's highly food aroused, managing those situations. And she's also got really high prey drive. That's another challenge with her in particular, which would totally rule her out as a service dog anyway, but just as a regular dog. So we're having to be constantly on guard, for example, for the many, many domestic rabbits that have been released in our city. So everywhere we go, we're always on guard, because she has this, like we're talking teeth chattering, freeze on the spot kind of high drive. Yeah. So anyway, but yeah, go ahead.
And that's one of that is actually, I think, one of the challenges that that we do here with our clients is, you know, they might end up with, say, like a field bred lab. If that dog has come, we've had a few clients who have had, and the dogs are gorgeous, they're beautiful. But if they've been matched up with somebody, say, who some of the symptoms of their disability leave them, you know, struggling with some fatigue. If they have like really bad pain days when they have to stay in bed, having an outlet for a dog who's used to, you know, being on the go, being busy, can create some challenges, you know, to provide. And that's the important thing too to remember, is that we actually do have to provide appropriate outlets for these dogs' behaviors. Otherwise, they you know, they can get a little bit spun up, and things can go pear-shaped. But that brings me to the other point of, and I know Donna's going to get to it, but it just kind of sprang up in my mind, is that you have to actually have a support team there for you. So that was just something that I just wanted to mention, is that, you know, you're not going to have to go it alone, hopefully, when you have your service dog. But just something to bear in mind is, if you do have a dog who, you know, is a little bit busier, do you have a friend that will be able to take your dog out hiking for you a couple times a week, or, right?
Yeah, or can you hire someone to do it?
Yeah.
There's volunteer programs through high schools where you can get a work study type student. So there's lots of avenues if you look into it. They might not be, some of them might not be long-term, but they might turn into term. You know, maybe you get the volunteer from the high school and they continue on after their term is over, for example. So universities have the same kind of, they get credit for those kinds of projects as well. So yeah, exploring those are well worth the option for sure. Okay, continuing on with realistic expectations here. What we recommend is you do an honest assessment of where you are, what your environment is, what you are capable of doing, what is your family environment. If your family doesn't like dogs, or your family has this, you know, you can't bring your dog over, that's going to present huge problems, because even though it's a service dog, it doesn't mean that it's protected under any sort of law to take into your certain places, and family members' homes or private homes are one of those things. So that's a huge factor. We've had a number of clients come to us with that kind of barrier, going, well, I have this service dog, but no family members will let me come visit, and blah, blah. And it's like, okay, that's part of your support system. You have to make sure all of your family members, maybe not all of them, but certainly a number of them are on board with this and are happy to have you come to their house to help you with training, to help generalize door training, for example, or help training generalize settling in a different location. So it's really important, back to that support team. It's really important. What are you absolutely capable of doing is another piece. You know, physically, is there limitations? Mentally, is there limitations? Emotionally, are there limitations? What do those look like, and how is that going to impact your service dog? And how are you going to mitigate that? Is your support team going to be part of that? Can they guide you through certain things? Can they do the exercise part of it? Can they help you create equipment that you need, adaptability equipment, those kinds of things? And speaking of adaptability equipment, backing the truck up even further, looking, is a service dog the most appropriate way to mitigate your disability? Today with the technology, there's some amazing stuff out there. It's a one-time fee. Yes, it might be a big ticket item, but service dogs are a big ticket item. Make note, even if you're owner training, they're still a big ticket item. Dogs are getting very expensive. The training process itself, even if you train your own, you still need to hire, you still need to go to classes. So, you know, looking at the alternatives, diabetes, for example, those glucose monitors are pretty spot on, and you don't have to maintain and walk and exercise and clean up poop and all the other stuff that comes with a dog. Yeah. So looking at those kinds of technologies, and it's a matter of sleuthing out what the opportunities are for you in your environment that the dog can help you, that might be unique, but what is the bigger picture? Is this something that is your first line? I would say a service dog isn't and shouldn't be your first line. I would say you should exhaust all other techniques and technologies before you consider a service dog, because it is such a big time, energy, financial investment for everybody, no matter who's involved.
Yep.
The other key thing we recommend is that your disability is stable. We often have people who've just been diagnosed with diabetes, for example, and you know, they're really gung-ho to get this diabetic dog on board, and they really don't understand their own diagnosis yet. They don't understand what it's like to live with it, and you need to be stable for a period of time to figure all that out, to figure out how a dog might fit into that, if it's the most appropriate or inappropriate way to mitigate it. So definitely having a stability, and also for training purposes, if you're not stable in, say, an anxiety or PTSD, then you're not going to be consistent in your training, and it's going to go all over the map, and it's going to take you 5 times longer to train that dog, and it's going to be inconsistent training. So ideally, we want to have some sort of stability. You've got your support system in place long before you ever consider actually get a service dog.
And one other aspect of that, I think, to remember too, is that for a lot of us who have whatever disabilities, stress can really trigger it, right? Stress can trigger different symptoms, and I think that most of our clients that are doing owner training can attest to the fact that training your own service dog is stressful. It's stressful on a multitude of different levels. It's not uncommon to have folks have some tears at times, right? Because they're frustrated. So, really, this is the information that we're giving here today. It's not meant to discourage people, but rather it's to go into it with wide open eyes, so that, you're not setting yourself up you know, to make your symptoms worse, potentially because you're stressing out. It's, you know, Donna mentioned there's an emotional toll to it. There's a financial toll. It's a really big undertaking. So, you know, setting everybody up for success. So making sure that, yeah, you do know, you know, what the parameters are of the illness that you're living with. And making sure that, yeah, that you are stable. One thing that Donna and I have talked about before too is trying to make sure that I know sometimes for myself, I think, oh, I'm doing absolutely fine, and you know, my various illnesses are all in check, and then I kind of like sit back and go, oh, right. And so my mom has mentioned that I haven't called her, you know, every day like I normally do, or you know, I haven't popped by her place, and so asking somebody who's in your like close inner circle to kindly and gently give you some feedback, right? Would you say that I'm stable? You know, what are some of the things that you notice that happen when you know, if I'm kind of up and down? What do you think would happen if I did get a dog as a service dog, right? And what do you think? What do you think that my my ability would be realistically? What my ability would be? You know, to train the dog, you know, 5 days a week. You know, to be able to actually get it done. So if you do have, you know, a close family member, if you have a doctor that you're working with regularly, that's actually another really good person. You know, like sometimes when we get these a diagnosis, we don't have all of the information that we need to be able to be like, yep, okay, so I have, you know, disease X. We may not know, you know, is this going to be something that like just stays like strictly, you know, kind of you get the diagnosis and it stays there, or is it going to be one of these ones, right, where you're up and down and down and up and up? And so ask them for some info, and you know, and to give you maybe like a bit of a guideline, right? Okay, so you've just diagnosed, you know, we're just starting you on this medication. The average that I've seen in you know, in other patients has been, you know, that it takes like a year or two for them to get stable on medication. So that's part of your support team as well too, right? Is asking them. Because I know we can get really gung-ho on the idea of, I'm going to get a service dog and it's going to really help me and it's going to change my life and it's going to, which, you know, hopefully, yep, that is the case. But it doesn't always happen that way. So.
Yeah, cool. And one last thing I wanted to say about the realistic expectations is making sure that you do have a medical diagnosis from a medical doctor, nurse practitioner. If you are required to do any sort of certification, that's who's going to be writing the letter. So you want to make sure that you have that behind you as well, so that yes, you indeed do have a diagnosis, and that's an important piece for getting a service dog. You might think you have something, and maybe you absolutely do, but it's nice to get that third party, and legally wise, it would be a really good idea to get that in writing from them saying this person has X, Y, Z, and a service dog would benefit them. That would be the starting point at minimum, and it's not hard to get, quite frankly. I mean, some doctors are very amenable. Others will make it very difficult. So it may depend on your doctors as well. And again, it's not just doctors. In BC, for example, nurse practitioners can write the reference letter for the actual certification application. So look at some of the other providers. Psychologists, obviously, can write those kinds of letters as well. Okay, so let's move on. So your environment plays a huge role. We sort of alluded to this, but I just did want to make sure that we did flesh it out a bit. So the physical environment that you're living in, you know, do you have enough space to have a dog? What does it look like with your other family members around? You know, how many rooms are in the house? Those kinds of things. Stair access and your mobility. Like there's just so many things that you'll need to consider physically. You know, is the layout work? Is your house have a big open plan? Some of our clients have roommates and they're living in a house maybe with other dogs. You know, is that suitable? Will that work for you? And you need to take serious consideration, because not everybody trains the dogs and handles the dogs the same way. And you'll often get conflicts in the methodology. We're in a first free group here, right? So, but we all know that. So that can happen. And if you have no way of confining your dog when you're not there, or if you go to work and someone else is taking care of your dog, I mean, that's a whole nother piece, right? Right. Just that physical layout and how that's going to look. So your social environment as well, you know, how many people do you have coming and going? You're going to need a lot of people to help you. It takes a community to help train a service dog, owner trained or a professionally trained. There's communities. The nice thing about the professionally trained one is they have the built-in community. They have all their coworkers, they have all the volunteers, they have, you know, the physical layout facility. So we don't have that, and we have to make sure we have it before we start. So that social environment is key for support, for, you know, the days that you're feeling like crap and you need someone to take your dog out, or if you're in the hospital for a long period of time, who's going to take the dog, on those kinds of things. Having people come and knock on your door and practice, you know, appropriate greetings at doorways. Using people as distraction. Maybe your friends have dogs you can use as a distraction. So that social network will be a key part of your training process. So you have to have that in place. And if you don't have it in place, you can certainly create it, but it's going to take effort. I know when I moved here, we knew nobody. I had 2 dogs, and especially when we got my younger dogs, I joined the local dog club just to kind of find people, and I joined a club with Jesse, and I was able to hand select people that I felt comfortable with, and I felt comfortable with their dogs, so I was able to use them and their dogs, and they were thrilled because they were getting free training working with me, because I sort of knew at the time what I was doing. And so I sort of created my own network that way, and we did things like we had weekly walks where people from the club would drop in, and everybody was responsible for their own dog, but we were just training our dogs around other dogs. It didn't cost us anything. It was once a week, but that takes organization. So is that something you're willing to take on or you're willing to contribute to? Because if you're not, then odds are it's going to fizzle over time, because people don't want to do that stuff, right? And over time it gets boring. So you have to be willing to contribute and give as well as to take. So that's part of the social environment. I mentioned about family support. Definitely, you know, having family that's okay with this, and not only okay, they have to be incredibly supportive, especially if you have a very small family and you need a lot of support from them. They need to be on board, and they need to also be interested in learning the techniques. And positive training does take, there's a huge learning curve at the very beginning. So that's something that people don't count on, is the huge learning curve, learning the concepts, applying the theory. What does that look like? And, you know, in reality, you know, even myself and my husband, we have 2 dogs. We don't have children. You know, I'm not training a service dog. Even there, you know, I'm out and about and I see stuff my husband does, and as good as he is, and he's fantastic. Honestly, he's fantastic. He still doesn't do some things the same way I do, or to the level that I do. And I have to be accommodating to that, because I can't expect him. It's not his level of interest. It's not his thing. So we have to also be able to give and take in those kind of situations as well. What else? Certainly our mental functioning is really key. You know, do you have the ability to focus mentally? Do you have executive functioning, working memory, flexible thinking, confidence that what you're doing, self-control? All of those are key pieces. Ability to record. That's all an important part of training a dog. And, you know, if you can't, then again, not necessarily to say you can't train a service dog, but you have to line up that help to be able to do that. You know, who's going to keep you on track for training? Who's going to be helping you record it? Or maybe you need to help in finding a way that records for you. I always think of recording as journaling, literally writing down on a piece of paper or typing it in, but maybe videotaping is your way of recording. Maybe audio tape is you know, you can get on your phone and say, well, today we did XYZ behavior. We used 10 repetitions. The dog success rate was 80%. And then you have a record of what you did, so that when you go on, you can remember what you did, your dog success rate, and then how to continue on from there. So those pieces are absolutely critical.
The lateral thinking as well too, right? So like thinking outside of the box. So you know, Donna has over 300 free training videos. I don't know if everybody knew that, but Donna has over 300 free training videos available over her two YouTube channels. And it's really interesting, because that's actually one of the resources that I used when I first started to learn about clicker training. Like I said, I was a little bit stalkerish, and I followed Dawn across different social media platforms. I was like, look at what I can do.
And I just thought I was putting it out there to help people.
Yeah, no, you kind of completely changed the way that I was going in my life, which is, you know, just a little bit appreciated. But when it comes to doing the owner trained service dog stuff, Donna has got like a whole bunch of videos in the various classes that we have. She's got the write-up, she's got the audio. And that being said, it's fantastic and it's an amazing, and each one of the courses is incredibly complete. There's a lot of info in there. But you have to actually be able to have some, like I said, outside of the box thinking, because your dog may not move exactly the same way that Donna's dog moves, or the way that our client dog moves in the demo. And so being able to kind of be like, I think you called it a flexible thinking, right? Like a flexible approach. I know for myself, I can be really formulaic and be like, okay, A, and then it has to be B, and then it has to be C. And so being able to, to be like, okay, well, A, B, and C isn't working. Can we maybe do EFG, right? So being able to adjust yourself.
Or A1 and A2. And then B.
Precisely. Yes. I shouldn't just skipped ahead. Bad lumper.
Yeah. We all do it.
But yeah, it and then that also goes back to the idea of your record keeping as well too, right? So it's the record keeping and the planning, being able to be aware of what you're actually doing while you're in the training sessions. How you are impacting the behavior of the dog, right? So there's so many teeny tiny little pieces of it that, yeah, it's a lot of brain work.
Well, I'll skip from that to the emotional component as well for your environment. So as I said, a lot of our clients do have PTSD and anxiety, and you need to seriously look at the impact that has on the dog. We know that there's studies out there that have shown that dogs can pick up anxiety from their humans. And I mean, it makes sense. We're all social creatures. We learn from each other. They definitely take a bookmark of our page, and they take note of everything we're doing. So if we're starting to show anxiety in a generalized way, then the dog is likely to pick that up too. So your choice of dog will help with that. And it's amazing that a lot of people think they need to have a super sensitive dog for PTSD and anxiety. And in fact, the opposite is actually true. You need a dog that's super stable and in fact a bit aloof in some ways, because then they can detach themselves from that sensitivity and from that anxiety. And so when you really need them, we teach them what to look for. Is it a tick that you do? Is it a behavior you do? Is it a chemical your body gives off? We can teach them what to do if they detect those. So we don't necessarily want them to be that sensitive, because they can devolve into our sensitivity. It's a fantastic thing that dogs do, but it can also be detrimental when you need that stable and you're relying on your dog as your stable influence. So that's a key piece. And so there are ways around that. How you can do that is, I always recommend, the first thing off the bat for me anyway, is wait until your dog is 18 months before you do any kind of anxiety, PTSD related stuff. Sure, you can train the foundations, but don't put it together. Don't add a cue. Don't expect your dog is going to do it. For one thing, your dog is not even emotionally or socially mature yet anyway, and they're not physically mature. So wait until your dog can handle it, and your dog is going to be stable enough to handle it. Another way of handling it, if you can't raise a puppy, like if you're worried about exposing your puppy, is to get family and friends to raise the dog for the first year and a half. Again, carefully choosing who they are, that they have stable environments. They're not creating anxieties in the dogs themselves either. And again, that's what all the programs do. They take a dog that's puppy raised for 18 months, and then they take it in and they put it in a really intensive 6-month program, and then the dog is ready to go with the handler. Well, that kind of numbers isn't really realistic for owner trainers, because often we have them right from the get-go, or often we're starting with a rescue dog, and you have to learn your own, the skills to train your dog. The dog has to learn how to fit in your environment. So it can take a whole lot longer than 6 months, and you're also not working full-time on it. They have professional trainers, they have the facilities, all of those kinds of things. So as a general rule, I'm just sort of jumping ahead here, but I might as well talk about it here. I always recommend that, realistically, don't expect your dog to be working in public with you, doing tasks, and with you as a team until the dog is about 2.5 to 3 years old, because it's going to take longer as an owner trainer, and especially because you're living with your disability, and that slows the process down. So that's part of expectation too, is that 2 years old, the dog's going to be out of the well, maybe not, and it depends on the dog. It depends on the maturity of the dog. Some mature earlier than others. Larger breeds are slower maturing. So there's all these factors that fit in, and our expectations and our social situation that we put it in can definitely affect our dog. So we want to take those into considerations, back the truck up when it comes to our expectations and go, okay. And what that also does, it's really important, if we do back off, is we can have a more natural relationship with our dog. It's, you know, we can slow things down. We can enjoy the moment. We can spend time on things that we need to spend time on, rather than feeling rush all the way through. It's not, you know, the end goal, yes, is wonderful, but it should be the process that you get there. You're building that bond. You're moving through life together, and it's something that you can work on. And will you ever actually achieve it? Sure, you can designate your dog as a service dog, and work through. But even service dogs coming out of programs, again, you know, 2 years old, they're going to a whole new family. It takes them a good 6 months, maybe a year, for some of them to really gel as a team. Well, as owner trainers, we have a benefit because we've been with our dogs, you know, potentially all the way along from puppyhood, or from the time we've got them as a rescue, or as from the breeder, wherever that looks like. But there still is that gelling time when you're working in public on a regular basis. There takes time. You're going to different locations. There's that generalization aspect that takes a long time. Dogs are not great generalizers when it comes to positive stuff. They do generalize quickly when it comes to punishment-based stuff and trauma, for sure. And we see that every day in dogs that have been traumatized. But when it comes to the positive stuff and the generalizing for positive, that takes a whole lot longer and a whole lot more exposure. So realistically, we need to expand how long that we're anticipating it's going to take. But by slowing down and saying, okay, we can do this at the pace that we can do it at. We're not going to set any date down the road, you know, 3 years, 5 years, whatever, you know, 2 years, whatever it might be. That's when you get into trouble, because you put pressure on yourself, you put pressure on your dog, and you just need to let it happen. It's really about training the dog in front of you in the environment that you have, with the skills that you have at the current moment. And you're going to get better every day. Every day that you train, you get better. Yep. And that's going to improve the process. It's going to speed the process. But you just take it, you are where you're at, and you just move forward from there. So think about it as the process rather than the product at the end. And I think that will do you a lot better off. And I'm like that. I have decided and chosen myself not to compete at a high level, for example, because I know I would put a lot of pressure on my dog and on myself. And by enjoying the process, enjoying the training, which is what I really enjoy anyway, then that takes all that pressure off. And, you know, we'll get there one day. And I have competed with my dogs. I've done rally, I've done fly ball, I've done agility. And I didn't really enjoy doing the actual competition and all that's involved in that. What I did enjoy was the training portion of it. And yay, it's great that, you know, I get to a certain thing and say, look at all the cool stuff my dog can do. And that's, to me, that's what it's about. It's the process rather than the final product. So just keep that in mind. That will help to reduce the emotional stress on you and your dog by doing that. Okay. Anything else to add to that little piece, Jen?
No, ma'am, you covered that very thoroughly.
Thank you. Okay. Just looking through our list of ideas, we've covered a lot of them, which is fantastic. It's nice how they all integrate, because it does. It's really, that's why it was so hard to tease out. Everything integrates quite well. Okay, resourcefulness is a really key thing that you need to look at in both yourself and the people around you, is how creative you are and how flexible in problem solving. And that might mean everything from the equipment that you use. You know, just because you see someone's using a piece of $100, $150 equipment, you don't have to run out and buy that. You can make it out of some wood at home. You can use a box, you can use a Rubbermaid bin. You know, be really creative in what you have around home. And that's one thing I'm really good at, is that resourcefulness. And that's what I love doing. I love that part of that creativity part is, okay, someone's gone and bought this thing. What could I use instead? Because we're probably only going to be using that piece of equipment for a short period of time, for one thing. I don't want to sink all that money in. And a lot of our clients don't have the money to sink into that. So what do we have around the house that we can use in place of that to get the concept across to the dog, and then we move along? Because ultimately, all of these kinds of tools and physical resources, we need to fade anyway, because when we're out in public, you know, we don't have access to those. We don't want to be dragging them around. It's like, you know, we'll be lucky if we're carrying a blanket for our dog to lie on, some treats, you know, clean up potty stuff, right, in case there's accidents. But really, who wants to be carrying around a huge backpack with a bunch of equipment? I don't, and I do a lot of training, and my car, and as Jen can attest, my trunk. Jen, what do you call my trunk?
I call it the tickle trunk. Seriously, it always makes me giggle because we open up Donna's trunk and she's got in there, she's got, you know, a baby stroller, she's got a baby doll, she's got an X pen, you name it, it's in there, which is
stuffed dogs.
Stuffed dogs, yeah, it's actually paw targets, a variety of paw targets. But the thing that just to go back to what Donna was talking about in regards to resourcefulness is that Donna can usually tell me, oh yeah, and I got that at a local thrift store and it was like $2. So yes, if you need some help in figuring stuff like that out, Donna is your lady. So
maybe we should run a class to that effect. What can you use instead of?
Exactly. I think that would benefit me, I know.
So being resourceful is key when it comes to those kinds of things. Being resourceful as far as fundraising for the initial cost of your dog, for training your dog, for housing your dog. And there's lots of ways of fundraising, not just the traditional ways. And I'm actually working on a class and have been working forever on a class. I don't know if I'll ever actually publish it, but it's on fundraising and saving money and that whole thing, because it is such a huge issue. We'll see whether that actually, I've got lots of pans in the fire, shall we say, and lots of interest, and I keep adding to them over time, but whether they actually get published or not is a different story. But that's one I think that would be really helpful for a lot of people, is just, you know, using that creativity and that resourcefulness and finding funds or in kind is just as important. You know, getting in kind services or trading with somebody else or those kinds of ways of being resourceful is also absolutely key as well. Let's see what other things for resourcefulness. I mean, time-wise, energy-wise, being resourceful is key too. You know, where can you make time? How can you build it into your daily schedule so that, you know, and as we know with clicker training in particular, literally 5 or 10 repetitions a day will get you far further than using other methods, you know, or doing like a 1-hour session once a week. So just building those teeny tiny little pieces and getting those, getting that time back and integrating into your day so that you are taking advantage of it, and you can sit down at the end of your day and go, yay, you know, I did 3 sessions of 10 reps each. Well, awesome. What did my dog learn in those 30 reps? Well, I know my dogs can learn a whole lot in 30 reps. I look back at some of the videos that I've done, like the training the dog to shut the door or flipping the switch, and, you know, 40 reps, Jessie learned a whole lot, and she's not an incredibly smart dog. She wasn't an incredibly motivated dog. She was a very fearful dog, which is the key thing I'd overcome with her. But she was able to learn this stuff, and it's, you know, and very quickly. So trying to just get those little pieces and making sure it happens on a regular basis. That's being resourceful, right? So make use of whatever resources you have and applying them. And again, that's where the creativity comes in. A lot of that creativity. Being resourceful in getting helpers. Like I said, you know, can you set up your own weekly meetings? Can you go join a club? Can you find an online support group? Now that we've got these meeting rooms in Facebook, and we've got Facebook Lives, and we've got, you know, all of these things are just fantastic for getting resources and getting ideas of how you can be more resourceful and what you can find with what you have, as opposed to what you need to go get. Right.
And it you know, in terms of resourcefulness, one of the things that one of the things that we hear from our students quite often too is, you know, having various disabilities can mean that you feel a little cut off from your community, right? When you're not feeling well, you know, and you're stuck at home, and so being able to, or feeling like, you know, like there's at least one person out in your community that you can approach for help, right? And having some flexibility in what that help might look like, right? They don't have to be a pro dog trainer. You know, if you've got, you know, a neighbor that lives down the hall from you, they don't have to be a pro dog trainer. But being able to you know, to reach out, and it can be really scary. You know, it can be really scary to ask for people for help,
especially if you're an introvert.
Yes, exactly. And
Believe it or not, I'm an introvert, even though most people don't think so. I am. And it's really hard for me to reach out and get help. The other piece of that too is also taking the help and accepting it and going, okay, how can I actually use this and apply it, rather than just going, yeah, you told me that. Yeah, I'm doing that already. Well, no, you're not really. And I do that myself. I mean, we all do it, right? We go, yeah, we're doing it already, when in fact you're not actually. You need to relook at what you're doing and make sure you're actually applying the effort. And I've hired other dog trainers. When we first got Jessie, and her and my previous boy, who loved every other dog, he did not like her. He actually launched himself off the couch to attack her. And that should have told me something about her and her level of fear. Of course, I was like, oh no, I got to keep her. And that's part of a challenge, is to turn away dogs. But yeah, reaching out and getting help from other people and actually accepting it. And I did accept her help, and what she suggested worked, and it was fantastic, and it was a learning thing for me. So that's a hard piece for a lot of people, especially when you want to be independent. You know, so it's it's like, if you ask for help, take it, absorb it, figure out what you can use from it, and then move on and apply it. I'm just looking at the time here, so we're already at like there's 8 minutes to.
I know. I was chuckling about that.
So I'm just kind of looking down. So one of the key things I did want to highlight for sure is the emotional toll on actually having a service dog. And you need to know that in advance. When you go out in public, you are now a spotlight. You're different than everybody else. You're the one with the dog. And people behave very bizarrely. Some of them are lovely, but there's some bizarre reactions to that. And unfortunately, in being so, you are a representative of the service dog community, and we have to be able to handle that politely. And I mean, you might not have the time and energy to do it at that moment, but handling that very politely and responsibly and moving on. And also being able to get yourself out of certain situations and handling those situations. I will often call on staff. That's why I tend to suggest clients go to the same location over and over again. You get to know staff, you get to know the layout, that builds you confidence. And when you have those situations happening, say someone's following you around the store or something like that, you can go to the front desk and say, look, there's this lady, she's following me, and she's very annoying, she's distracting my dog, you know, can you intervene? And then that way the staff can intervene on your behalf. You can just move on, continue your training, or maybe you need to leave the store. I mean, it depends on what happens, but that public view and that advocacy and that role, that it takes an emotional toll, and you need to know that ahead of time, because it just comes with the territory. And a lot of people don't anticipate that, and they can't handle that. If they've got anxiety or social anxiety, that will definitely add, and the dog won't be able to do the job, or you'll be over threshold all the time just being out in training. So take that piece in. Are you going to be able to get out and train on a regular basis because of that piece alone? You know, if you're fearful of children, for example, and you're going to places where children are, how are you going to handle those interactions? Maybe that's when you draw on your support team and you have someone come with you so that they can intervene. And I will often do that with clients. I'll be the intervener. I'll be walking along with their puppy, and if they've chosen not to have their puppy interact with public, I will physically stand between them, and I will engage the people and distract them and talk about the puppy. Meanwhile, they can have the distance that they need, and they can work with their dog. So having somebody in that kind of support role is very, very helpful to help offset that emotional toll. But that's a huge piece. Anything else shouts out to you, Jen, in our list here?
No, I'm just, I'm scrolling through the comments, and it sounds like, there's Christy. Hi, Christy. Molly, Piehopper, right? They've all said that having those strangers, right, that come up and they want to be curious and they want to ask questions, and it can be really overwhelming, right? Especially if you've got, your dog is in training, and here you are, you're trying to manage yourself, you're trying to manage, whatever symptoms of your disability that, you might be dealing with that at that moment. You're trying to deal with your dog, then you're trying to deal with like some person, right, who, they want to ask you questions, they want to insist that, all dogs love them, therefore they should be able to pet your dog, right? Like we've heard it all. You can just get to the point where you're like, oh my gosh, I'm never leaving my house again with my dog, right? And that's the antithesis of what you are hoping to achieve. So yeah, there's we've all got our stories about the interactions that we deal with in public. Darlene just asked a question here regarding, are patches helpful? I know Donna has some thoughts on patches, right? My thought is that if it's a patch that's big enough that it's readable from a distance, and it's very succinct, right? Working dog. I think that's Donna's preferred phrase as well too. Because when we say service dog, sometimes people will feel that because you're in the public sphere, right? You're at a grocery store and it says service dog. People are nosy. People, you know, having something like that says service dog might you know, indicate to some person, oh, well, you know, it says service dog, tell me what you need it for, right? And it's like, well, that's none of your business, first of all. So the language that we use on the patches can be, it can be a plus or a minus, right? Having them big enough so that the person doesn't actually need to like get in like really close to be like, okay, so I've just read the 4 lines that are on that one patch. Oh, and it tells me to get back, right? So being mindful of the size of them. We would generally suggest try not to use like swearing on your patches. You know, we know you know how frustrating it can be, you know, to have people constantly coming up and asking questions. So yeah, so patches, they can help, but they can also hurt. It really depends on you. It depends on your dog. And I think that it also depends too. There are some communities that I think that are a little more savvy about interacting versus not interacting with service dogs. So, you know, it's like we would say, it depends. Which is not really an answer, but it is.
Well, it is very true too, because some of the bigger organizations may be well known in the area, and they expect to see a certain patch, certain color, certain vest, and the dog wearing a vest. And so if yours doesn't meet that, they're like, ooh, that's different. You know, so it depends on what people are comfortable and used to, what that looks like. And yet in other places, not needed, you know, you can do whatever color you want kind of thing. The key thing, I believe, and this is my perspective, is you have to keep a certain level of professionalism, because we are representing service dogs as a whole. And if you look at the ADI, that they acknowledge that as well, is that there is an educational role that we have to play. There is a professionalism level that we have to, if we want to be taken, you know, for as a professional or as someone who's legitimately using a service dog, for sure. Okay,
so yeah, Dawn. Sorry, I just wanted to
make a quick sum here.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Can I just make a quick sum, and then we can just focus. We still have 5 minutes for questions,
Perfect.
but I'll just very quickly. So the other pieces we were looking at was the behavior. So we had antecedent. That's all the things we just talked about. So the behavior is the actual training, and that's a whole nother big ball of wax. And as I said, we do offer support via our online website as well. And then the consequence piece of it is what comes after. So maintenance training, which is ongoing. Of course, if your disability changes, you may need to train additional tasks. If you're going into new environments, you may need to change those. You need to always refresh. If there's places you're not going into regularly, you'll need to update those and keep those fresh for your dog. Or tasks you're not using, keep those maintained as well, because otherwise you'll use it. And then also at the end as well, making sure that your dog's getting regular veterinary care. And because it is, being a service dog, especially if it's on a full-time basis, is really stressful physically, emotionally, on your dog. So you want to make sure that the vet is looking at your dog going, oh yeah, you know, that your dog is developing, you know, XYZ condition. You might want to back off on this particular task, or, you know, whatever it might look like. But there is a physical toll on your dog, looking at retirement age, all those kinds of things down the road. But those are all pieces that are part of the consequence, or the outcome, and the down the road kind of thing. So that kind of just sums up our antecedents, our ABCs of owner service dog training that way. Yeah. Okay. So sorry, let's go back to questions. I just wanted to finish that up before we ran out of time.
Yeah, I just wanted to mention, thanks Dawn Jackson for saying that you do carry cards that are from the charity that you're involved with, right? Because it is sometimes it's just a lot easier just to be like, oh, you know, thanks for your interest, and hand them, you know, a pre-made card that says, yes, you know, this is what a service dog is. And then that way too, that kind of gives you an excuse, right? Because they'll be like, oh, what is this? And you can kind of tootle off, right? So that's a really good coping mechanism to have, or coping skill to have in place. Maria Vargas says that she had to prepare and practice scripts to handle public interest. Donna and I have actually, I know you've got the videos somewhere where Donna and I actually practice, right? Oh, hey, hi, you know, can I say hi to your service dog, right? And actually practicing, putting your hand up, stop, right? So that you do have that muscle memory, because when you're right in the thick of it, it can be like, right? You get like a little bit of stage fright, and you get flustered and overwhelmed. And that's when, you know, that's when things can kind of slip out. You know, you might feel frustrated, you might feel overwhelmed, you get like a big rush of like adrenaline, right? And you get in that fight or flight. So yeah, so having the cards, having practiced, right? What you're going to say, how you're going to say it. One of the things that I hear from folks that I really appreciate is that they're so worried about coming across as angry or upset or rude. And you know, good to have that awareness. But it's also perfectly understandable that, you know, in the heat of the moment that you can get really overwhelmed with it. So yeah, cards are definitely a good idea. I don't think that, Donna, we don't have any training cards, right? Like this is my service dog in training. But I know that in the various
in one of the public access class, I have an example of cards that can be made.
Okay. And I know that there's other templates that are out there as well too, that are available. If you Google you know, service dog training card, I'm sure that it'll pop up. I can also look and come back later today, and I can pop an example down in the comments if you want.
Cool. Okay.
Any other questions?
Yeah. Anything else? We'll give you a chance. We have 2 minutes left. Oh, and I have to show you this. Sorry, go ahead. No, just keep talking.
I've gone through, I've put the various links to the resources as well too. Oh, Molly Cutler just said that she's got some as well. Yeah, so all of the resources I've actually posted in the links, or in the comments. So if anybody has questions about those, feel free. I know Donna and I will be checking back in throughout the course of the day just to see how things are going. You know, if anybody had any other questions, or if they were unsure of some of the resources, I'm happy to answer questions later today as well too, in the comment section.
Cool. Yeah, and one of the things I did want to mention is I do have a whole free class on service dog selection. So, and it goes through some of the things that we talked about today, and there's checklists so you can kind of look at it in a little bit more detail. That'll be one of the links that we provide. And if you're a professional trainer, it's a really good thing to direct people to say, look, you know, if you're serious about this, there's a lot of considerations. You know, do you want a puppy? Do you want an adult? Do you want an adolescent? Do you want to go breeder? Do you want to go rescue? You know, what are the pros and cons of each of those? How do you talk to the breeders? How do you find an appropriate rescue? That's all covered in the class. As well as I also give some background information about different stages of life in a dog, because that's a key piece. When you're obtaining a dog, getting a puppy is very different than getting an adolescent dog, is very different than getting a mature dog. So those are all different pieces that you need to know and what's involved in each of those life stages. So I think what we'll do is we'll end the session here. And as we said, you know, if you have any other questions, Jen and I will be monitoring as the day goes. And other than that, we definitely thank you very much for attending. Hopefully this has been really helpful. It was a lot of fun, actually, wasn't it, Jen?
It was. Yeah. And thank you so much to, you know, to Ruby, Emma Judson. I know that there's a whole slew of people that were behind the scenes to put this all together. And I haven't had a chance to watch all of the talks just because life, but the ones that I have popped into, I've just been blown away by the just the value. I mean, it's free, but the amount of info that's been shared by so many different professionals, just mind blowing. So thank you, and thank you to everybody who participated. You know, as people that are watching, because it's no fun presenting if nobody's watching. So, so yeah, so thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, and we'll see you again hopefully soon.
Bye.